Our moderator I met about a year ago, Anastasia Zorshinsky. She's a co-founder and co-president of Startup Nation in Montreal, an Israeli organization at Concordia and McGill that has engaged thousands of students through high-impact events and leadership initiatives. She has been elected for 3 consecutive terms as a Concordia Student Union Counselor, where she operates at the highest level of student governance, drafting and defending complex motions at campus safety, accountability, institutional integrity. Anastasia has represented students in federal political spaces, engaging with members of parliament and participating in national level advocacy. In November 2025, Anastasia gained national attention for challenging a Government of Canada decision denying Israel as her place of birth on her passport, advocating for equal recognition and civil rights while also being featured in major media outlets including CBC and the National Post. A recipient of multiple national leadership awards, she is recognized for building durable institutions, leading under pressure, and serving as a strong public voice for diverse student communities. Guys, she's going to be a leader that you're all going to line up to have her sign something for you eventually. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for the amazing Anastasia Zorshinsky. Okay, our first panelist, we are going to introduce this guy. His name is Jacob Smith, but he's known as a moderate case. An American law graduate and digital creator who's built a massive following under his handle, The Moderate Case, with degrees in political science and law from the University of South Carolina. Jacob finds facts and logic to polarize online debates. Even though he's an American Christian, a huge part of his platform is his open, unapologetic support for Israel. He uses his legal background to bust, destroy, obliterate myths, and defend the country's right to exist against distorted narratives in Western media. His sharp, unfiltered takes on global politics have made him a rising star in the advocacy world. Guys, give him a real warm welcome, Jacob Smith.
We love you, buddy. We love you, buddy.
Holy smokes. He's not a Beatle, okay? It's not Paul McCartney. Everybody calm down. Okay, our next panelist, Ayal Yakobi. He is a recent graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in political science and modern Middle East studies and an incoming student at MIT. He is a prominent voice on issues of radicalism and extremism. He spoke at a House Congressional Leadership press conference in 2023 and testified before the House Judiciary Committee in 2024. Yakobi has appeared on TV networks including CNN, ABC, Fox, and contributed to publications such as the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the New York Post. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ayal Yakobi. Our final panelist. I actually known him for a little while because I used to be on TikTok many, many years ago where he started. We were friends, but we lost touch. So this is, our next panelist's name is Nick Matau. Nick is a content creator, activist, and U.S. Navy veteran who served on fast-attack nuclear-powered submarines. Yeah, I know. Everyone's like, wait, really? He focuses on cutting through misinformation, media bias surrounding Israel, Zionism, and the region's complex past, as well as actively discussing historical context and promoting balanced dialogue through live debates most nights for the past 4 or 5 years. Guys, a real warm welcome for Nxt Matau.
Don't trip. Woo! Have a seat.
I will pass the microphone to the wonderful Anastasia.
Thank you so much. First of all, welcome to Toronto and welcome to the Next Generation panel. So in front of me, or technically next to me, are sitting 3 absolutely brilliant young voices. And I just want to say that the 3 of you have done an incredible job at defending anti-Zionism on social media, in person, online, with every action you take. So really, they deserve another round of applause, a huge one, for everything that they have done. So the 3 of you are visibly young voices, very unique, very strong voices in this third era of Jew hatred. So I will start by asking you just a few personal questions, because I'm very curious to know about your journey and how you got here and how you started. And then after that, I'll pick your brains a little bit and we'll get into a deeper conversation. So actually, I'm going to start with Jacob, or the moderator case. So, Jacob, you're a Christian, conservative American. You're not Jewish, nor Israeli. You started an incredible project called The Moderate Case, where you constantly strategically debunk online and sit across people whose entire mission is to delegitimize Israel and dehumanize the Jewish people. So, can you tell us a little bit, or a lot, about what motivated you to start The Moderate Case? What new things did you learn from when you started compared to where you are today with regards to fighting the anti-Zionism and standing out for the truth? And also, why at all, as a Christian, did you feel the need to stand up for the Jewish people?
Yeah, so I guess to begin, I grew up a very argumentative kid. In fact, my mom got me a hat one day for Christmas that said, "I'm always right" on it, because I would always argue. So I grew up always interested in debate and arguing, and I had been on social media prior to the 7th of October discussing politics. I got into it around the age of 13, 14 in the 2016 election in the United States, and I had a presence on social media, but particularly after October 7th, I was in school. I was in a class on public opinion, and I got a notification on my phone. I remember it specifically. It was from Reuters, the news outlet, about the attack that was happening. And immediately, I wasn't in this realm of the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, but I was introduced to it through TikTok, and I immediately saw people cheering on Hamas, spewing ahistorical narratives, and from there, I just started responding to videos. And as it went on, I got a lot of hate for it, a lot of harassment, even death threats, which I continued to get in the tens, if not dozens, every single day across platforms. And I, stuck with it, and I've continued, and here I am today. I think the problem has only grown, very obviously, since the 7th, of the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist sentiment that we see. But one thing that I'd say that I've learned is how to talk to people. I think that a lot of people, obviously, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Israeli, I don't really have any skin in the game. But I could see where you guys come from, you guys meaning Israeli or Jewish people, in terms of what you have to go through. I don't have to go through that, but I could imagine, I could have some form of empathy or sympathy to try to put myself in your guys' shoes. And there's a lot of frustration. It's very emotional, and I can understand that for you guys. Whereas me, I try to remain calm, and that's something that I've kind of learned over time, is how to address who you're talking to. A lot of these young people my age, they're very radical. They think it's funny to be very evil-spirited, mean. And I try to just remain calm. I think that demeanor, whenever you try to get to the bottom of things and, be a human, it allows for a lot more deeper conversation to where you can change minds. I'm here to change people's minds, not to make people look like idiots on the internet. I want more people to be pro-Israel. I want more people to support the Zionist cause, to support the Jewish people. So knowing your audience and knowing how to deliver what you're trying to get across to them is very important. Now, the last part, as for why as a Christian I think I should support the Jewish people, it's because the Bible is very clear on that. I was talking with Nick. I talk to a lot of people. I have this debate a lot with even other Christians. Our scripture doesn't teach replacement theology. We don't believe that Christians have taken the place of Jews. We believe that the Jewish people play a specific role in the final plan of God, and that all of us, we have been grafted in, that the Jewish people are the roots of Christianity. The God that I worship was a Jewish man who practiced Judaism, Jewish customs, and I'm not to abandon the Jewish people. My God tells me not to do that, and I also worship that God of Israel.
Wow. Wow, that's very powerful. That's very powerful. Thank you for that answer. And I want to ask you, Nick, a similar question, because you as well are not Jewish, you're not Israeli, you're an American Navy veteran who is defending a country you have never lived in, and for the people you never grew up around, right? So most of the world just can't make that math work. Can you tell us where and how your journey started, and what is the reason that you're standing up for the Jewish people, and how over time you observed the growth of anti-Zionism?
Yeah, okay. So for those that follow my journey, which seems like a lot of you guys do, I just flew in from Israel. Literally an hour later came here. And I gotta say, every time I leave Israel, it does feel like a little part of my soul kind of just rips. Although I am very glad to be in Toronto. But I'm really glad to be with you fine people. First off, I want to say I connect a lot with the Jewish people increasingly, specifically, Israelis. Maybe it's because I served 12 years in the military. Maybe there's some kind of a dynamic there because they all serve in the military for the most part. But to answer your question about, to piggyback off what Jake was saying and what got me started, I started actually about 5 years ago. Not on purpose, and I do get the question a lot, like, Nick, I'm Jewish, and even I don't understand why you're so, such a strong ally for us. So about 5 years ago, I made a video, not even really, it was pro-Israel, but it was kind of more making fun of leftists because they were, one day, May 2021, Hamas launches 5,000 rockets. They go from BLM, they take it out of their bio. Not even like they add it on, they take it out of their bio, put Free Palestine, like it was the trend for the week. Because it is. And so I made a video more just kind of making fun of that. I went to bed that night, and again, this is before I was bigger, even before TikTok was that big. I wake up the next day, it goes relatively viral. About 70% hate. And of that 70% of hate comments, 90% of them were people that thought I was Jewish. And the amount, now, just to give you guys some context, I didn't grow up around Jews or Israelis. I don't even know if I knew a Jew growing up. Maybe I did. And the amount of death threats because they thought I was Jewish. I'm Italian. Look, I have a Roman nose, okay? The amount of nose I don't know what it is anti-Semites are so obsessed with noses. I don't get it. The amount of I hope you burn and die and Hitler this and Hitler that because they thought I was Jewish. It did kind of shock me. Now, to the Jews in the audience, you guys are like, yeah, okay. It probably, you got to understand, you guys grew up with it. My now wife, she is Jewish. She told me about how when she was a little kid, she didn't understand why her elementary school peers would throw pennies on the ground in front of her. She didn't get it until her parents had to explain it to her. I didn't grow up around that. I didn't understand it. So when I saw how bad anti-Semitism was, I only saw it when people thought that I was Jewish. And so it got me very interested. And I'm like, I need to look more into this. Why is this conflict, this Israel-Palestine, why is it so sensitive? So I read my first book, Arab-Israeli Wars by Chaim Herzog, and then I read some anti-Zionist books, Konstantin Zarek, Ilan Pape, as much as I read, Benny Morris, Alan Dershowitz, a lot. I've read an incredible amount. Anyone that watches my lives knows, yeah, Nick, I learned from you. You've learned a lot. I did an autistic amount of research because I am on the spectrum. And yeah, I just learned a lot, and I realized the more I learned, the more I realized I was in the right to be pro-Israeli. And the fact of the matter is that the facts do stand on the side of Israel and the Jewish people. it's just not as catchy. I mean, that's just the truth. It's very easy to say from the river to the sea or the free Palestine. It's catchy, it's quick, it's very appealing to the younger generation on social media. It's not so easy to counter and be like, well, actually, from the river to the sea, not really, Jordan was actually part of. It's just not as catchy. And so my goal and what I do, Jake does a great job at just convincing people. I think I do have a little bit of funner time just making them look dumb. But I do want to change some minds, and I think what I try my best to do is I bring up the people like Sneeko, I use them to bring the stupid, just dumb points, not because I think I'm going to change Sneeko's mind, but if there's even just one person listening, there's going to be a certain amount that's going to agree with Nick Matau no matter what I say. They should, but there's going to be a certain amount that are going to agree with Sneeko's no matter what they say. But there's got to be, even if one person that's like, I don't know what the right answer is. This person said something. I've heard that before about the Jewish people. Nick Matau comes in and says, actually, blah. If I can just make that one person be like, you know what, maybe it is a little bit more complicated. Like the Jewish people say, to save one life is to save the whole world. You can change one person's mind, maybe you can change the whole world's mind.
I just want to say that in the 1930s, there were non-Jews that saved Jews from the Holocaust. They took a moral stance and had clarity, yet they were a minority. And they were people from different nations with different religions and different backgrounds. And that is why it is so important to embrace what you guys are doing. And it's such a good reminder for us of how grateful we are that there are people like you who stand up and speak up for us. So really. We would love to hear from you now, Ayal. So we have a few things in common because just like you, I'm also a student at one of the most anti-Zionist, Jew-hating universities in North America. I go to Concordia University. And you were a Jewish student in UPenn during October 7th. So, and almost overnight, your campus really became one of the most visible examples in America of anti-Jewish hatred, right? From the encampment to the blockades, to the riots, to the speeches on campus, to the classrooms. So I just want to take you back to that moment and understand, we are so curious, what made you start speaking up and standing up? And when did you realize that if you didn't speak up and take action, nobody else will?
Definitely. First of all, I just want to reemphasize, I think what everyone thinks is really appreciate the both of you standing with the Jewish people and the Israeli people. And we don't take it for granted. I'm serious. Thank you. For me at UPenn, it started actually 3 weeks before October 7th. We had this festival called the Palestine Rights Literature Festival. And it had a litany of the most virulent anti-Semitic speakers you could think of, from Susan Abu Hala to Roger Waters to the rest of the Hitler Youth. And I was shocked by this conference. Penn had been a school that my grandpa went to, that my mom went to, that my brother went to. You understand how I got in now. And I was shocked. Penn's nickname is Jew Penn. And I didn't really want to believe that it was happening. Like I thought Penn would never allow this. Every building you look at Penn has Steen or Berg on it. And I had never been, an activist, politically active, other than in my undergraduate studies. And I essentially wrote a petition and got over 200 signatures in less than 24 hours to send to the administration to say, why are my tuition dollars funding, this event that's coming to campus? And the administration kind of waved it off. And then the day before the conference happened, someone broke into Hillel at 8 a.m. yelling, "Fuck the Jews," while flipping over tables. 3 days later, a swastika was found in a campus building. And 5 days later, the Chabad Sukkah was vandalized. And so we all know there's going to be instances of anti-Semitism, anti-Christian hate, anti-racism. But when you have 4 events compounded, bookmarked in the span of 1 week, that's not random. That's a systemic issue that exists. And we had a meeting with alumni and parents scheduled on October 7th on Saturday, obviously got canceled. And that was a massive wake-up call to me because, I was a senior in college, went out with all my friends on Friday night, just like how all the Israelis went out to the Nova Festival. I woke up in an ivory tower of an Ivy League school. They woke up either dead, kidnapped, or still fighting for their lives at the Nova site. And I immediately called my dad, and I'm sure most people called loved ones, just asking, what's happening? You see Telegram, but you don't actually know what's happening. And I said, I have 2 options. I either, take a first flight out and go to Kibbutz Be'eri, Niroz, Kfar Aza, and liberate these kibbutzim, or I do everything that I can in the United States to fight for the Jewish people, fight for the Israeli people, fight for the hostages. And I'm not in uniform, so you know which option I chose. And I really started to connecting all the dots between the fight for civilization, between the forces of darkness and the forces of light, between Israel and the Iranian axis, and what's happening in America. And I think at college, we've kind of gotten immune to the Marxist Islamist ideology that they've been indoctrinating us with in classrooms of teaching us that, yeah, it's fine for a regime that chants death to America and executes tens of thousands of its citizens to simply have professors at college campuses that openly support them. We've been indoctrinated to think that a professor saying beautiful sights to wake up to, which is what one of my professors posted on the morning of October 7th, is just a casual new normal. And I think like myself and these 2 and millions of young people, I said enough is enough. And I think I never had a social media account outside of my personal Instagram and Snapchat before October 7th. And in the spring of 2024, I downloaded Twitter, granted trying to get Bill Ackman to retweet me, but continued after that. And I think myself and these 2 are case examples is that if you're a young person, Jewish or not, if you care about Western civilization, if you have the courage to speak up, there is literally nothing to stop you from getting hundreds of thousands of followers and to speak your mind and your voice. And there's an appetite for this because courage is a currency and there's a lack of it right now, especially amongst Gen Z. And so I hope, I am less about convincing people who don't agree with me to agree with me. My goal is to actually convince young people that aren't speaking up to speak up.
That was amazing. And I think your fight at UPenn also played a big role as a case study for many Jewish students, like for myself as well. Like we looked at it, and I also then in August 2024, we launched a lawsuit against Concordia. So we really did look up to your progress and what you were doing. So thank you for fighting and starting really from almost day 1 at UPenn. So thank you so much. Yeah. Big round of applause. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and pick your brains, but I will start with a quick personal story where in the end you'll understand why I'm telling you this story. So my grandma and her family are survivors of the Holocaust. They lived in Ukraine, and during the Second World War they had to flee to Kazakhstan by a cattle train. And my grandma was born on that cattle train when they were fleeing to Kazakhstan. After the war, they came back to Ukraine, and there was a huge famine. There was no food. There was complete destruction, complete poverty. And my grandma then spent her life living in USSR and as a Jewish woman. And then she had my father. And when my father went to school, he was beat up for being a Jew in Ukraine at his school. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, they moved to Israel, where my father met my mother. My parents then experienced several wars in Israel, including the Second Intifada. And the stories that stayed with me that they told me from the Second Intifada is when they went to Tel Aviv University. They had to drive from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv almost every single day and take the bus. And they would tell us stories that buses that they would have taken, or they missed, or the bus on the same route literally just exploded from suicide bombers. So they also survived the Second Intifada. And now there is me, their daughter, who is in one of the most anti-Zionist, Jew-hating universities in North America, living through this cycle of Jew hatred again and again. So what I'm trying to get at here is that this did not all happen by accident. Obviously, all of these eras are very complex on their own, but they all tie back to the libel and to the language war. It's all about the language. It's all about the words that are used to dehumanize and demonize Jews, such as my family and such as many families here in the crowd. And these are the words that lead to the justification of the annihilation of a whole people. Obviously, Hitler knew exactly what he was doing with the Holocaust, and it didn't start on day one of 1939. It started decades before that with his propaganda and the subhuman and racially impure Jews that he was promoting. So as we covered in the early panels this morning, today the libel changed from Jew to Zionist, from Jew to colonizer, to genocider, to baby killer, making us subhuman once again. It mutated in order to survive as a Jew hatred masked under political criticism. So now, Jacob, Ayal, Nick, we know because of your strong stance on the truth about Jew hatred and propaganda, you also deal with a lot of pushback. This is something that we don't see and only you see. So we want to know from each one of you individually how you would define the most effective strategy on dealing with anti-Zionist libels, conspiracies, disinformation, and hate when you encounter it in your day-to-day life, on campus, on social media, and anywhere else. Starting with Jacob again.
Yeah, so those are a couple of different topics. When it comes to conspiracy, I think it's just a fact-based approach. And I think Nick would tell you this. Nick always, and when he's talking to people individually, he always goes point by point, because a lot of these people they like to spew off 15 total points to make some grand argument. But it's a lot harder to debunk and respond to 15 points and break them down, provide all of the information, complexity, and nuance than it is to spew them off. And Nick does a great job of doing that, taking things point by point by point. And most people after first point, they concede. They don't get to the rest of the 14 with Nick because they're wrong from the start. But in terms of all of the libels and things like that, a big focus of mine has been hypocrisy and double standards. And whether it be anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, whatever term you'd like to use, it's kind of equatable to racism in the idea that if you have a standard that is not universal, that it is a narrow standard that you're only applying to one group of people, yet it could be applied to tons of other ideologies, people groups, nationhoods, their history, their creation. If you're only focused on the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, then you are a hypocrite. You don't have a standard. It's not universal. You aren't principled. You're a bigoted hypocrite. So when it comes to Zionism or the creation of Israel, was it flawless? No, it was not. Obviously, terrible things have happened, but is that exclusive to Israel? No. Israel's independence is probably morally and legally one of the most defendable positions throughout history. If you look at how all of the other countries were created in the Middle East, how other empires were operated, how America was even founded by settlers who came over here. They were Native Americans who were here. So when you have this worldview that only looks at Israel and scrutinizes Israel in this one way, but all the same things could be said, all of the same critiques, arguments, demonizing statements could be applied everywhere else, you're a bigot. And you have to open people's eyes to that and say, well, why is it exclusively Israel? Or why is it exclusively this one thing that maybe one Jewish person or one Israeli has done? How could you generalize this entire group of people and paint them all in this bad light, but you don't do this to any of these other people? I think whenever you can expose that and show you don't have really a solid universal argument here that you're upholding, that you're applying to everything, you're only focusing on the Jews, that hyperfixation on demonizing and scrutinizing the one Jewish state, the Jewish people, their history when, again, it's much cleaner, legally and morally defensible, the Jewish people's history and the creation of Israel, than almost anything else. When you can expose that to people, you can open their eyes to make them understand that they're not actually smart, they're not actually realists, they don't understand the world for how it's operated, they don't know history, they are bigots. But I try to not call them bigots off the start, because if you do that, if you call somebody a bigot, if you say, oh, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, they shut their ears off. They don't want to listen to you, which is why, again, I said in response to the first question, I try to remain calm. My demeanor, walking through things and trying to be a human, have a real, genuine conversation with somebody instead of just trying to basically spit on them, call them stupid, have this condescending attitude towards them. Talk through it, be consistent, have standards, apply your logic, apply your history, apply your facts, all universal. Don't solely point out Israel. Don't focus solely on Israel, because if you do that, then again, you don't have an argument, you have a narrative. And that's what these people have, is a narrative and a narrative alone.
So yeah, Ayal, if you could tell us a bit, and also you're posting so much on X, like we see your account is literally has gained so many followers throughout these years. So I'd really love to know what your strategy is, the most effective one in your opinion.
I'm going to go in a different direction with the question. I think the core of the question is, what can we do as Jews, as Zionists, if like how to approach others to convince them to join us?
Absolutely, sure.
So I think a really effective strategy is when you boil down who's an like if I told you who celebrated the Charlie Kirk murder, I can tell you whether they're waving a Palestine flag. If I can tell you who celebrated the assassination against Trump, I can tell you who's waving a Palestine flag. If I can tell you who celebrated burning down Josh Shapiro's home in Pennsylvania last year, I know exactly where they stand on Israel. And I think that I think is the core of it. And so with my account, I've been trying to shift it very significantly to not just focusing on Jewish issues, but focusing on the systematic process and ideology that's at play. And what do I mean by that is 3 weeks ago, Islamist terrorists stormed a Christian village in Nigeria. They massacred over 300 women and children and kidnapped another 200 schoolgirls. There was silence in the media. I saw a post on Twitter saying, "Don't care, they're Zionists." This is a remote village in Nigeria. And so I've tried to the best of my ability, is speak more to the interdynamic play between who is celebrating the slaughter of Christians, be it in Nigeria, be it in Congo, be it in the Sudan, whether it be the 42,000 Iranians who were slaughtered by the regime back in January in the span of 72 hours, be it in the lack of aid going to the children of Yemen while the Houthis and another Iranian axis is slaughtering people, whether it be the Uyghurs in China who are getting mass slaughtered by the CCP right now. And I think as Jews, when we recognize our history of oppression and recognize that those same forces would do the exact same thing to Jewish people if they habitated where those Christians and innocent Muslims and the Uyghurs are in China, that would be us. And I think just as we yearn for Christians in Canada and America to speak up for us, I think it's also our onus to also speak up for them and their people when they're getting slaughtered in different countries. And I think to Jake's point, it also points out the hypocrisy of it all. That there's a global microscope on Gaza, which started a war, and yet 42,000 innocent Iranians are slaughtered in 72 hours. That's more innocent Iranians who were killed in the span of 72 hours than total civilian casualties during a 3-year war in Gaza. And if you compare the number of articles, the number of I Stand With Palestines, the number of bullshit protests on the streets and at campus universities, it wouldn't even be close. And so if they're not going to have a voice, if the media and these fake activists aren't going to have a voice, let's replace that space. Let's fill that with our oxygen and uplift those people. And just as we expect them to join our rallies or vigils for the hostages, we should be showing up to theirs. And we should be speaking out for them too. And I think in closing on this point is that if we are going to have, two non-Jews speak up here so fervently in support of us and Israel, we should be speaking for them too, because alliances are so critical in the fight to save Western civilization. And the Jewish people are only 15 million in size. We need these allies. We need them. And they need us to speak up for them too. So in terms of, I know the question was about, how to combat people and stuff. I think it's less about combating people. I think it's more about inviting people in and being there for them, just like we expect them to be there for us.
I love that. Now, Nick, what do you think? What's your perspective on this?
I forgot the question because they all went off on a different thing.
It's all good. So, from you, Nick, we'd like to know, how would you define the most effective strategy on dealing with anti-Zionist libels, conspiracies, disinformation, and hate when you encounter it?
Yeah, I first want to say that, like earlier when you said they went from Jews to Zionists, yes, but it's actually more than that. They went from, Jews to capitalists to communists to Marxists to Zionists. I want to make it very clear that the interest in the Jewish people is very interesting. The interest in the Jewish people is whatever it is that the society says is evil or wrong or bad, regardless if it is evil or wrong or bad. That's what the Jew seems to become in the mind of an anti-Semite. So if it's a anti-capitalist society, the Jews are capitalists. If it's the opposite, the Jews are communists. Right now, Zionism, look at what a lot of pro-Palestinian groups call Israel a white colonial settler white state. Funny enough, the Jews weren't very white when they were being slaughtered in Europe. Now they're white. And the reason is simple, because there is a movement to try to make white bad, I guess. Right? It is what it is. It's just like, if you're white, you're bad and you should feel guilty. And so now that when you live in that society and you have that kind of mindset, especially on the left, let's be honest, then naturally all of a sudden Zionism is going to form and take on that ideology. The funniest thing is seeing when you see these allyships between these like kind of far left groups and far right groups, when they come together about hating Israel, sometimes they start to argue with each other. It's like, oh yeah, the Jews are actually white, and then the far right's like, no, they're not, and it's actually really funny. So to answer like the most effective way, I mean, as Jake said that I do, and I agree, I do that, is to go one point at a time, because it's the whole point from the pro-Pally side is to, I want to spout out 15 to 30 BS talking points in 15 to 30 seconds, because even if you are able to debunk me in one by going down the facts, well, I just got 14 to 29 points across to you and you didn't answer them. It's very important to try to solidify that. It's also very important to, sorry if this sounds a little extreme, I don't know, the Palestinianism, which I want to make very clear when I say Palestinianism, because it very much is an ideology that was created to subvert Jewish people in their indigenous homeland, and I believe that. Palestinianism, nobody's interested in the Palestinian people. You want to know why people are interested in the Palestinian people? Because they're interested in the Jewish people. And the Palestinians have attached themselves along for the ride. And so if you are interested in the Jewish people, which it seems to be a thing that's always, I mean, it's been that way since before recorded history, I'm pretty sure, then yes, of course, people are then going to be interested in the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people, there's a famous quote, I can't actually remember the name of the person, it was an Israeli Arab actually, it was a teacher, and I'm paraphrasing the quote here, but they said, I accept the fact that Arabs are a minority in a Jewish state, but when Arabs become the majority in the Jewish state, I will not accept the fact that Jews will be a minority in an Arab state. And so I think it's important to note that Palestinianism, directed from the Soviet Union. If you guys want to know more, read about Operation SIG. It still continues on with this day. We see it in Qatar. Tucker. We see this. Who do they target? Anyone? Who does Qatar and the Soviet Union, who do they target? They target students at UPenn, at Harvard. Why target students? I'll tell you why. Because they're the dumbest adults. Because they're the newest adults. They're the youngest adults. If you want to change the mindset of people, you're not going to target people that are set in their ways and are wise, that they've lived through a lifetime and a half compared to other people. You're going to target the ones that have a little bit of influence because they're adults, but they're young. They're new. They're new at being adults. Why do they target them? Because they want to subvert the West. They want to subvert the Jewish people. They want to disconnect the alliance between the Christian and the Jewish people in the West and other Western countries. And it's very sinister. And so, anyways, to wrap it up, again, I'm with Ayal. I know the question was like, what's the best way to combat it? I think, honestly, the answer is there's so many different ways. And I kind of like what Ayal said earlier about encouraging more people to speak out. And if anyone is thinking like, well, how do I do it? Nobody up here, when we made our first video, was like, perfect, that's amazing. I'm sure if I went back and looked at my first video, I'd probably be like, dude, that sucks. I'm sure Jake would probably agree. Y'all, like, it. Just do it, right? Just do it because you are on the right side of history. The rest will just come naturally as you continue to do it. And I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll look at my videos now and be like, dude, that sucks. So that's it.
So I know we probably only have a few minutes left, but I have a feeling you guys are going to have a long answer for this. So maybe just keep it in a few sentences each. And it's interesting because we have not covered this yet in any of the panels, and I think it would be very interesting to ask you guys, because you guys are the young ones and you guys are on the social medias and really are experts in it. Why do you think it is so mainstream today among the left wing and now the new left wing, which is the horseshoe right wing, that are now acting as anti-Western, anti-American, and of course, on top of it all, anti-Zionist and as anti-Jewish forces? Why do you think there is such a vast, lucrative market for this type of content? And why is this type of content popular and gets so many views and clicks? Why is there so much traction to these videos? Jacob.
I'll keep it short. Social media and media in general is incentivized by getting people to click, getting people to stay on and read it, and division. Anyone who has studied public opinion knows this. Media companies, they flourish. They make insane amounts of money by writing a short headline that gets your attention, emotionally sways you, and gets you to stay on the website, the video, the article, whatever it might be. Secondly, so in that way, media is the biggest enemy of the people, not in the West. It is the #1 biggest enemy. These people don't care about truth. They don't care about you. They care about their money. Second point, there is a huge appetite for contrarianism, meaning whatever is the status quo, whatever is true and normal, I'm going to oppose that because it makes me feel good. And it's a particular issue among the younger people. And there is also a huge appetite for being a complainer. And this is just an institutional problem that the West has to fix to embolden young people, particularly young men, to rebuild and conserve our institutions that made the West the great nation or the great civilization. Particularly, I'm an American. The institutions, we have to conserve the institutions that made our country great. We have to conserve our culture. We have to be proud of it, because there's a lot of young men who have been taught that they are the problem. They're the reason to blame for all of the issues, and they feel now as if they are on the defense. They're being attacked, and now they have to inflict this attack mode onto other people and attack other people. So embolden young people, particularly young men, economically, get married, have kids, socialize, build something productive for yourself in your life, conserve your institutions, and also understand the media, especially large corporations and outlets, are not your friend. They don't care about you.
Thank you.
Agree with everything. I think it comes down to being a coward. I think Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly are complete cowards. I think Candace Owens is a demonic psychopath, and I don't say that lightly. And I think there's an appetite for clicks online in terms of, I would just be reiterating everything that you said, so I don't need to go back through it. I think for things to do on it, starve them of attention. Stop posting clips of Tucker about Jews. Stop posting clips of Candace Owens about Jews. All they're going to do is post more clips because they know that we're all going to boost it and post 100 clips and be, look at how insane what they said is. No one cares. People are just scrolling, and they're just going to keep scrolling through videos and videos. So just stop posting about these people. Starve their attention for it. And then number two is, I think specifically Jews have poured so much money into like major cities, and a lot has gone to DEI causes that don't benefit the Jewish people. That money needs to be reoriented specifically to Jewish organizations, or I think it needs to go to the forgotten people of whether it be Canada or the US. I think Jews should be donating to build churches for young men in America and young men in Canada. I think we should be investing in the peripheral of the country. These major cities have become completely unsafe for Jews in basically every Western major city, whether it be in London, New York, Toronto. I mean, the things I've seen in Toronto in the past 48 hours. I saw 36 Islamic Republic flags outside the legislative building yesterday. I mean, that's crazy. But we have been investing in buildings in major cities that haven't gone to Jews. If we're going to do that, I think we should invest in the forgotten people of the West who live in the peripheral of the country and show them Jews are an integral part of the fabric of whether it be Canadian, British, or American society. We're not some other group that live in the Upper East Side in Manhattan. We're part of the country. And we need to invest in the country, not just in, right around our block and then post, that we invested in some DEI organization. We need to double down on Jewish institutions and also invest in the people that are supporting us, be it evangelical Christians or anyone in the country that supports us.
Agreed with everything. I think that, to put it clearly, I think that the Jewish people have always been a minority. And so I think when I find it very interesting that a lot of people, I'm American, so a lot of Americans hear this a lot. You have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, especially if you're a minority. Don't victimize yourself, don't complain. But then some groups, including the Jews, do that, and then people go, whoa, 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 slow down a little bit. I don't really get it. I think, though, long story short, what happens is that Jewish people are a minority. They're small people, and they do such amazing things. That's why when you ask a lot of people that don't know the answer, how many Jews do you think are in the world? They don't give you the correct answer of about 16 million. They'll be like, I don't know, 1 billion, 500 million.
Literally.
Right? It's because they're light amongst the nations. They do amazing things for such a small people. So I think it's very easy to poke at them. I am consistently saying to my fellow Gentiles that why is it that I appreciate what you're saying about like, hey, we should be putting into them, and I agree with that. I think that's amazing. But why is it that the Jews seem to be standing so much by themselves? There shouldn't be. I was just at Yad Vashem yesterday, 2 days ago. There shouldn't be a Hall of Righteous Gentiles. And what I mean by that is I'm glad there is because of what they did. And I'm glad when people come out to me and be like, you have no idea what it means for you to do this even though you're not Jewish. It's not that I don't like hearing that. What I mean is that I shouldn't be, or Jake shouldn't be so rare that we have to hear that. To end with that, I think it's very bully-like behavior for a lot of these people and in the name of anti-Zionism, to attack a people that make up 0.2% of the world's population. And I think it's very clear, very, very clear why they do that. These are not a people that have good ideologies. These are not a people that somehow are good in everything and are so moral just the Jews is like the one thing they're not. No, people that are anti-Semitic and attack the Jews, they are the worst of the worst. They push evil ideology, and I agree with what Ayal was saying. I think a lot of Jews have leaned left because it came from a place of it came from a place of wanting to do good, and the left for a while even did do that. I mean, I grew up in California. I would want to say I was at least center left growing up, but it shifted. It went so far, and now you got the horseshoe theory that they abandoned the Jewish people. And I agree with Ayal. I think Jewish people need to now stop pushing towards societies and organizations that simply abandon them when the Jews needed even just an inkling of help, and start putting it into not just their own people, but start putting into the fabric of the countries that they're in, which Jewish people have done, especially at least in the United States of America. You read the history, Jews go back to the very beginning and before the United States of America, and they really helped build, well, I was going to say this country, sorry, I'm in Canada, 51st state, no, I'm just kidding. They really helped build the United States of America, so put back into that, and I agree with everything you all said, so I'm not going to repeat it. I was just kidding about the 51st state thing.
So we've officially run out of time, but thank you so much, Jacob, Ayal, Nick. Thank you for your powerful voices. Thank you for coming here.